about maybe your why, what's motivating you to be here, or talk about how just even thinking about that maybe change some behaviors as you were reaching for something. You might have said, maybe not. Maybe this is a better choice. Does anybody have any successes that they want to share? Any thoughts at all this week? Well, no. Great, thank you.
Well, Sandy in our small group said about a why not do it,
Uh-huh.
and she had some really good points on it. And I kind of agree with, which I can't remember what they all are. But, and I also had, my sister-in-law had a stroke this week, and she's only 52. So that was another eye-opener for me. That's to, why not get help? Certainly with help. It doesn't necessarily prevent that, but it will certainly help.
Certainly help. Absolutely.
And I did the measurements and did the numbers thing, and oh dear, not good. And it made me realize, oh, I'm not very healthy.
Yeah.
The numbers were not good, and I don't look at myself as being overweight. I mean, I know I'm heavier than I should be, but it made me feel like I'm very much overweight.
Was there any one number that kind of stuck out for you that made you think, boy,
Yeah, it was my cholesterol.
your cholesterol?
Oh, man. Yeah.
So where was it? Do you want to share or no?
It was over 200.
Okay. Well, I'll share mine. Mine was
It was
260 when I started.
Okay, mine was 252.
Okay.
What is it now?
Mine is 205, and I have ratios that are better than they're looking for.
Wow.
Without a statin.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, so it is.
it worries me, so I realized this is where I need to be.
There's another number that they have you look at is the waist to height ratio. That one is so frightening.
The weight, that's the one that's real frightening, and
Yeah.
it says I'm obese.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, that's what I was telling her. Yeah.
And
My body
it's just
mass
very
is not
exciting
good.
that you can watch all of those numbers change through this program.
Yeah, I needed to do that so that it gets me really focused.
So do you need to go to a doctor to get the numbers?
I took them off my chart, you just go right on, and yeah, and I was just at my doctor not long ago, and went in and got all my
And that was good.
numbers.
I learned how to become hungry. And then I'm trying to learn how to figure out when I'm full. And then to replace my munchies with other crunchies, like Peapods.
Awesome.
And actually even through this week, sugar is starting to taste just a little bit more foreign than it did before.
Well, that's excellent. The sugar is the hardest one to catch.
Yeah.
It is the hardest.
Yep.
So can you give us a little tip maybe on what you did, how you replaced it? Like, was there a trick that you used so that it was more obvious?
I went out and bought other food.
Okay.
I went out and bought some other food, and my daughter's been great. She said hummus instead of whatever dip, salsa instead of the cookie, instead of that delicious Samoa Girl Scout cookie. And I just bought them. Dr. Moreland's girls. Girl Scouts. And now they're gonna sit there and rock.
I want to buy Girl Scout cookies, but now I will only make the contribution so that they can get sent
That's
to
a
the
great
troops.
idea. Yeah.
Because I don't want them in my house.
Yeah.
But that was a really good point, and I noticed that for my family, I would just set bowls of sometimes soybeans out on the counter, or I just set bowls of things that I could just grab a few, just to have it out and more accessible, rather than, because it's really hard when you've got little kids, which I do, who still want, sweets and cookies and, more things like that. So make those only accessible to them in places where they'd be looking, but then out in the obvious places where I'm walking by, you know, things that are healthy to eat. Yeah. Any other aha moments or anything? All right. I think the conversation that I'm hearing here is that's an excellent start, and that's exactly the way the Daniel Standard Plan wants you to start, kind of that slow start, and they really want you to get your thoughts around it and your thoughts into a good place so that if you're ready to make these really what I would consider fairly radical changes in, you know, the way we eat. All right, are we ready?
I am.
And Dr. Moreland is going to come and talk about the scientific truth about who gets sick and who stays well.
Thanks, Tracy.
You were welcome.
So yeah, I sent an email out a few weeks ago on the Daniel Plan, and then I tried to figure out how can I send an email, like just a couple of days later, on selling Girl Scout cookies after I just talked to people about doing this great healthy thing. So yes, and so our girls sold a lot of cookies to some of you. Eventually, some of us too. So yeah, give them to the boys, they'll eat it.
Right.
So tonight we're going to be talking about our thought life and how we can think well, and how when you go up and talk to people about their health and you ask them, how do you know if you're healthy or not? Very few people will think about their thought life. They'll think more about their physical health. They'll talk about how you can eat right, how you can exercise, and that's how you can be healthy, and that's what most people think of. And so recently, a few years ago, a book was written called The Blue Zones. Has anybody ever read The Blue Zones? So The Blue Zones was by an author by the name of Dan Buettner. And Dan was, he's actually from the Twin Cities, and he was commissioned by the National Geographic Society to go and find groups of people that lived to be 100 years old and were thriving at 100 years old. And so what he did was he found 4 areas in the world that where these people are just thriving at 100 years old, and he looked at what's common about these 4 different areas that we can look at and apply to health. And one of the things that he found was that diet was important. He found that not necessarily exercise, but activity was really important. But actually what he found was more important was he found that social life was one of the key things that helped people healthy. And then taking a Sabbath, taking a day off and just relaxing. And those aren't things that people typically think of. But I would have to say, and I challenge you, that I think that your thought life, your spiritual life is the foundation. And that's where it has to start. Because if it doesn't start with that, then what's really driving you to do the things that you're doing? So tonight we're going to be talking about your thoughts. So watch your thoughts for they become your words. Watch your words for they become your actions. Watch your actions for they become your habits. Watch your habits for they become character. Watch your character for it becomes your destiny. Many of us have probably heard that in some form or another. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." And so we do have to realize that our thought life makes a huge impact on our overall health. So we're going to talk about stress tonight too. And so if you want to look at stress, I've got 2 teenage daughters, twins, teenage daughters. So it's stressful if you've had teenagers or in the middle of teenage life right now. It's stressful, but I got to tell you, the most stressful time we've actually had with our girls is when they were about 2 years old. And so we have twins, but they're kind of polar opposite at the time. At 2 years old, one was very much the negative, just negative about everything, and one was very positive about everything. And so to the point though where it was actually causing problems. And one was so negative that it was having a hard time raising her, and the other one was so positive we were also having a hard time raising her. So we took them to different therapists to see how we could help them. Tried a lot of different conventional means, and nothing was working. So finally we took them to this therapist that was kind of unconventional is what we were told. So we're like, okay, we've tried a lot of different things, so let's try this guy. So we took the girls there and we told them what the problem was, and he goes, I got the solution for you. He goes, what we're going to do is, the one that's just so overly positive and just everything is sunshine and rainbows, we're going to take her, we're going to put her in a room by herself, and we're going to do the same with your other daughter, the one that's just negative and having all these problems. The one that's negative, though, we're going to put her in a room that's just full with candy and toys. It's going to be like Disneyland in that room. And we're like, okay, that's kind of an interesting way to do it. We're not sure if that's going to work or not. But then he says in the other room, we're going to put your daughter that's just positive about everything. we're actually going to put her in a room full of horse manure and see if she can be positive about that. We thought that is pretty strange, but we're like, okay, we've tried everything, let's try it. So we decided for about an hour we'd let them stay in those rooms. So we came back about an hour later, went in the room with the girl that was, Brianna, the one that was very negative, went into her room, and she's just sitting in the corner, hadn't touched the candy, hadn't touched any of the toys. We're like, what's the matter? And she's like, well, if I had played with the toy, I could have broke it, and if I had eaten candy, I could have got a toothache, or I would have got sick. And we're like, well, that did not work. And then we went into the room where Brittany, the one that's just overly positive, full of this horse manure, we're like, well, for sure, no kid's going to find anything positive with that. Well, we get in there, and here she is throwing it up in the air, and she's just running around happy as can be, and we're like, what's going on? She's like, Dad, with all this horse poop in here, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So that is not a true story. So we are going to be talking about our thought life. We're going to be talking about stress tonight. So when we look at our thought life, we really want to look at what is the right motivation. So if you have your workbooks with you, you guys can go ahead and turn to section 2. There's actually some places where you can fill in the blank. But the key thing that we want to talk about tonight is willpower versus God power. When we look at having the right motivation means that we try to get our strength from God. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So many of the times when we're trying to fight through things, get through things, many of the times that we're doing that, we're trying to do it all on our own. We don't even sit and think twice about maybe praying to God about it, asking God if we even should be doing what we're trying to do, and we're just trying to force it. And I've done this. How many here have done that? I would say we probably all can go back and say, okay, there's many times when I've moved forward and God's not with me on it. In fact, God doesn't even want me to be doing that. So many times we do rely on our willpower. In fact, isn't that what the Society of America teaches you? Is that it's about willpower. It's about doing things, being stronger, having a positive attitude, and fighting through things. And really that's not what the Bible teaches us. The Bible says that we need to be dependent. And so it's that paradox principle that we are to surrender our lives to Christ, and that's where we get our strength from. Where the society today would say, no, you don't need to surrender, you need to just get stronger. And we know how well that's working for America. It's not working well at all, is it? So many times we try to do it on our own, and many times we fail. And so the cool thing is if you're doing it led by God, you really can't fail because you're following God, and He's going to give you the strength. Now, it may not seem it while you're in it, that He's helping you, but God is always with you when you're following Him. So tonight we're going to talk about stress. So according to the American Medical Association, most chronic illnesses in America are due to stress. Robert Sapolsky, if you have Netflix, you can actually go to, he has a documentary on Netflix that's talking about stress. He spent a lot of time over in Africa dealing with orangutans and dealing with monkeys, living in their lives, in their communities, just to see what is it about there that causes them to have stress and not have stress, and just watching how that works. And so he wrote this book about why zebras don't get ulcers. So stress can wreak havoc with your metabolism. It can raise your blood sugar, or your blood pressure, I should say. It can burst your white blood cells, make you flatulent, ruin your sex life, and if that's not enough, it'll possibly damage your brain. So what's important to remember, writes Sapolsky, a professor of biological science and neuroscience at Stanford University, is that effectively managing stress can be a powerful weapon against serious illness. And so that's why we're going to be talking about stress tonight, because when we look at many of the chronic illnesses that we see in America, they are very much driven by stress. So, in fact, in 2004, a Canadian study where they looked at over 25,000 people from over 52 countries, what they found was that lingering stress more than doubled the risk of heart attacks, and it put it on the same par as if you're a smoker. So that's pretty significant when you think about that. We saved a spot right there for you, Cheryl. So smoking, most of us think, well, I'm not a smoker, so I'm not doing damage to my health. But what about chronic stress? It can be putting the same amount of stress on your body as if you were a smoker. So you really need to deal with stress. So why is it important? Because we know that stress can literally kill you. Okay? So what we want to do tonight is talk about stress. So what is the definition of stress? A specific response by the body to a stimulus as fear or pain that disturbs or interferes with the normal physiological equilibrium of an organism. So an example of it is worry over his job and his wife's health put him under great stress. Okay? Is all stress bad though? No. So we know that there's good stress, okay? And we call that eustress. Has anybody heard that term, eustress? Eu just means good. And so stress that is deemed healthful or giving one the feeling of fulfillment. So some examples of eustress. Can you guys give me some examples? What would be some good stress that could happen in your life that would actually help your body to be a healthier or to function better? Exercise, absolutely. You stress your body, you put it so that it has to adapt. So that's one for sure.
Mental stress of maintaining a finish line.
Yeah, mental stress, absolutely. You get through it, and guess what? You're stronger because of it. So absolutely. Or let's say you were given a deadline at work and you work really hard and you achieve it. That's going to give you some stress, but at the same time, it can be good because it helps you to be stronger. So we know some examples in weightlifting causes stronger bones and muscles. Working hard and receiving a promotion. Getting sick, this is a thing that a lot of people don't want to have to deal with, is getting sick. But getting sick can actually boost your immune system so that the next time you get exposed to it, you actually can get rid of the germ a lot easier. So getting sick can actually be eustress. Being around pets, we know that according to studies, being around pets, children that are raised around pets and even somewhat of a dirtier house, I wouldn't say you go live in a pigsty, but somewhat of a dirtier house shows that those kids actually have healthier bodies, they have less allergies and less asthma. So there is some benefits to being around germs and being around pets and so on. So not all stress is bad, but tonight, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the stress that can really affect our body in a negative way. So let's talk about that. So, fight or flight, who here has heard that term before? Yeah, fight or flight, you might not know exactly what it means, but you know that when you're in a situation such as, say you're up in Alaska and you're fly fishing and you decide to go down to the river, you first get down there, you don't think twice about looking around, you start setting up and then you look up and you see that there's a grizzly bear just a few hundred yards away from you with its cubs. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're probably going to go into fight, fright, or flight mode. Okay, and so we know what that means. That means I'm going to either flight, meaning I'm going to try to get away from it, or fright, I might just stay there and just be shocked so bad that I can't even move, or I'm going to have to fight this thing. Okay, that's what's going to happen. That's what fight, fright, or flight is. So let's just use this situation. I'm down by the river. I come across this grizzly bear with its cubs. What's going to happen to my body physiologically? Okay, because what we want to look at is we want to look at what is a normal response. Because is fight, flight, or fright bad to have? It's not bad to have if you're trying to get away from a grizzly bear. Okay, what we have to look at is God intelligently designed these bodies, so what's going to happen? So the first thing you're going to do is your nervous system is going to detect that there's a stimulus, there's a bear, okay? And your body's going to recognize, okay, this is not a good thing, a good situation that I'm in. So then the nervous system is going to send information to your sympathetic nervous system, or your adrenals, okay, your adrenal glands, which makes up part of your sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is going to influence specific organs to start working, and it's going to start decreasing other ones. So the sympathetic nervous system sends a message to your adrenals. Do you guys know where your adrenals are in your body? So they're right above your kidneys here. And so one of the things that we see that people that are under chronic stress, a lot of times they'll come in and say, I got pain here constantly. Well, that's because your adrenal glands are constantly working and can cause pain. And so that's where your adrenal glands are. Your adrenals are going to produce a few different hormones. Adrenaline is one of them. There's two different types of adrenaline, and then there's cortisol. You've probably all heard of releasing cortisol, which is also a bad thing if it's chronic. But in this situation, these are good things. Remember, these are all good things that happen. So what's going to happen? You had mentioned, you kind of were indicating that your heart rate is going to increase. Okay, why would your heart rate increase? So you can run faster, absolutely, because you need to pump some blood to parts of your body that need a lot of blood, which would be your muscles. Okay, so you're going to need to increase your heart rate, and you're going to increase your blood pressure to get more of that blood to the places that need it. Again, is this intelligent? Absolutely. You're going to increase your blood sugar. Why would you increase your blood sugar? What's that again?
Your tissues.
Yeah, actually it's more for, I think someone else said it.
Energy.
Energy, yeah. You're going to need it for energy because sugar, think of sugar as rocket fuel. That is what your body needs when it needs really quick energy. So you're going to increase your blood sugar, and you're going to go ahead and do that through activating your glycogen, which is your sugar storage, but you're also going to break down proteins to make them into sugars as well. You're going to inhibit your insulin receptors. Any idea why you would do that? Yeah, you don't want the insulin to shuttle sugar into your cells, so you're going to shut that off because you don't want to be shuttling insulin or sugar into your cells. You want to use it for the muscles, okay? So you want to be able to burn that sugar. So another thing you're going to do is you're going to increase fatty acids. This is also so that you can convert those into sugar, okay? You're going to increase clotting factors in your blood. Why would you do that? Again, your body is very intelligent, and it just saw a bear. What's it thinking? It's thinking, I'm probably going to end up with some kind of a wound here, and so I'm going to get ready for that. So it's going to increase your clotting factors. You're going to inhibit your genes for the uptake of LDL. Does everybody know that LDL is considered the bad cholesterol? So you're going to actually inhibit your uptake of LDL. So that means you're actually going to increase your LDL cholesterol in your blood. Now, why would you do that? Yeah, so cholesterol is actually there to help heal wounds. So again, you're planning for a wound, okay? So you're going to increase your cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, and you're going to decrease your HDL cholesterol. You're also going to inhibit your cellular immune response. Because do you really need to fight a cold when you're being chased by a bear? No, absolutely not. So you need that energy to be focused somewhere else. You're also going to increase sensitivity of the sensory systems. So that basically what you're doing there is you're looking at your eyesight being more effective and efficient so that you can find a place to get away. So you're going to increase these sensory organs so that you can get away, okay? And you can find a better way to get away. You're also going to inhibit brain areas of focused attention. Do you really need to be doing a math problem when you're being chased by a bear? No, you're basically not going to be able to do a math problem when you're being chased by a bear because you're going to shut that part of your brain off. So you're also going to stimulate brain areas for fear and anxiety, because do you want to remember this as a good experience or a bad experience? You want it to be a bad experience, so the next time you go down to go fly fishing, you're not just going to walk down there and start setting up. You're going to walk around and you're going to look, because you're going to remember, oh, remember the last time I did this? A bear chased me. So important to remember those things. So it's going to inhibit also brain areas for relaxation and pleasure. Again, you don't want this to be a memorable experience in a good way. You want to remember that this was a bad thing. You're going to inhibit all your growth hormones and digestive activity. Again, this is because you don't want energy going to those things, because you don't need to repair tissue just yet. You don't need to be digesting the food in your stomach. You need that energy to be going to your muscles and the parts of your brain that can help you to get away from this bear or fight this bear or whatever you end up doing. So all these effects of stress hormones are designed to allow you to survive a short-term emergency. Again, is this intelligent? Very intelligent, okay? Well, let's go back and look at this. Now, how many here are being chased by a bear, typically? Has anyone been chased by a bear before? No, so very few of us have that to deal with. But how many here have work deadlines? How many here have stressful jobs? How many here have children that stress them out? That was Christy, it's on tape too. So let's look at that. So that would be, and do those stresses just go away? No. Are they, unless you somehow get rid of your children?
Sleepover.
Yeah. That's why you said something about. So let's look at this though. Let's look at it because stress, most of us have stress in our life that just is constantly there. It's not just a short-term experience. It's what we call chronic stress, okay? So let's look at what's happening if someone has increased heart rate and blood pressure long-term. What disease is that? That's heart disease. What happens if I have increased blood sugar constantly in my body? I have diabetes. What happens if I inhibit my insulin receptors? Diabetes. What about increased fatty acids in the blood? Heart disease. What about increased clotting factors in my blood? Heart disease. What about increased LDL cholesterol, decreased HDL cholesterol? Heart disease. What about a decreased immune system? Sick, yeah, getting infections. What else? How about the big C word, cancer? I tell you, the best way you can get rid of cancer in your body is through your immune system. And if you have a suppressed immune system, you are prone to get cancer because your body's always producing cancer cells. So if you want to get rid of those, you need a high-functioning immune system. So another chronic illness. Increased sensitivity to the sensory organs and inhibited brain areas for focused attention. What disease is that? Not so much depression. How about ADD, ADHD? If you can't sit and focus in school because you're focused on everything around you, or you can't sit and focus at work and do your math problems because you got your boss breathing down your neck, that's what we see with ADD, ADHD, or just the inability to do your work because you're constantly focused on something else. Brain areas for fear and anxiety, that's the anxiety problem that we see in America. And is anxiety a big problem in America? Absolutely. And then those things that we talked about with relaxation and pleasure, this is depression. And so when we look at this, we can look at chronic health issues, chronic illnesses in America. This is how it's very much related to chronic stress, okay? So we can see that chronic stress has a negative impact on our health that can cause major illnesses such as heart disease, such as diabetes, such as cancer, such as ADD, depression, anxiety. So we can see that it's a problem. Now, how many here think that their stress is all going to just go away tomorrow? No. So you're still going to have stress. And so we talked about eustress versus bad stress. So what you need to do is not necessarily look at, I got to get rid of my stress. What you need to do is, I got to switch my stress from it being bad to it being eustress. Because until I do that, I'm going to have some major health problems develop in my health. And so what you have to do is you have to look at life differently. Okay, how many here have heard the Bible verse where it talks about putting new wine into an old wineskin is a bad idea? How many here really get that verse? How many feel like, I got it? So a few of you. And I really didn't get it at first. I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Because putting new wine in old wineskin and then putting an old new piece of cloth on an old shrunken piece of cloth, how is that bad? Well, what you have to think of is this, is that if you have a paradigm, let's say you see the world in a certain way, and then something comes along and teaches you, actually, that's not the way it is. And so you decide, okay, I'm going to accept that let's just use salvation for an example. Let's say I see the world that my job is to follow the rules, and when I do good things will happen to me. And if I do bad things will happen to me. And I just got to work hard to do those good things. And then someone comes and teaches me about salvation. It says, well, actually, Christ is going to be the one that will stand before you come Judgment Day, so you don't have to try to live a perfect life. We want to work as well as we can to strive to be like Christ, but it's unachievable, so you have Christ there to stand there before God at Judgment Day. And you say, okay, yeah, okay. But then you decide, okay, I'm going to accept Christ in my life, and then you just decide, well, as long as I'm doing good things, God's going to be happy with me. And when I do bad things, He's going to be mad at me. And so I haven't changed my paradigm. I still just see, well, if good things are happening to me, it's because I'm doing good things, and if bad things are happening to me, it's because I'm doing bad things. I really haven't shifted my paradigm, have I? The only thing I've done is seen that I don't go around telling people that I have salvation, but really, I haven't changed the way I look at life. And that's really what that verse is looking at. If you really want to be free, you have to look at, okay, it's not about me doing good things. Because what happens to those people is when something bad happens to them in their life, guess what they do? They're like, well, God, I've been doing good things for you, and now something bad happened to me, so forget you, that didn't work, I'm moving on. And so we have to shift our paradigm. And that's the same with our stress, is we have to see our stress in a different way. So you must break that cycle of stress. Who here sees an old lady? Okay, a few of you. Who here sees a young lady? So we're looking at the same picture. How do we see in two different things? Well, it's because the picture represents two different things. So the young lady, this is her chin, this is her nose, eyes, and there's her ears. Okay? The old lady, this is her nose, this is her mouth, this is her eye, this is her other eye. Can you guys see the old lady and the young lady now? So you can see that there's two different pictures in that one picture. Isn't that cool? But our perception, some of you saw the young lady and some of you saw the old lady. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to put this slide up, and when I say we're going to count, I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to read the sentence that's on there. We're going to read it out loud. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. And now what I want you to do is go back and I want you to count all the F's that are in that sentence. So everybody got it? All right, you ready? How many here got 3 F's? Okay, how many here got 4 F's? How many got 5 F's? How many got 6 F's? All right, so a few of you got 6 F's, but you read the same sentence. You guys all understand English, right? You know the alphabet? Okay, how did some of you only get 3 F's? Well, let's count them. 1 F, 2 F's, 3 F's, 4 F's, 5 F's,
Oh my goodness.
6 F's. So, the reason I had you read it out loud is because what does the word of sound like when you read it out loud? What does the noun sound? It sounds like a V, right? So it doesn't sound like an F. So when I told you to go back and count those, guess what happened? You skipped all of those ofs because of that. So you probably thought, absolutely, there's only 3 F's. Okay, is there any time in your life that you felt absolutely I'm right, but you were absolutely completely wrong? Yeah, so what we have to look at is it's about perception, because we can be wrong about how we're seeing the world. So, what do we worry about? This is some statistics that I'm not sure if anyone did a study on this, or I don't know if you guys know that about 57% of all statistics are made up right there on the spot. So 40% of all statistics, all things that we worry about don't happen. 30% of what we worry about has already happened, so you can't change it. 12% are needless worries, such as what someone else thinks about us. 10% are petty and unimportant, such as we worry about what's for dinner, about being late, about what to wear. 8% of what we worry about actually does happen. So about 92% of things that we worry about don't ever happen. The other 8%, 4% of those worries that happen are beyond our control, so we couldn't have done anything about it anyways. So really 4% of what we worry about is what we have control of. So that's really what you want to focus on, is that 4%, instead of the other 96% that you really can't do anything about and may not ever even happen. So the Bible does talk about worry. It tells us what to do instead of worrying, so that's what we really got to focus on. And that's what we're going to talk about, is first and foremost is going to God in prayer. These are just some of the verses on prayer. I think that God feels that prayer is a very important thing to do in your life, so you need to have a strong prayer life, okay? What I have found is I'm really good in prayer when I'm telling God what to do. I'm really poor in prayer when I just sit and listen, because I don't listen very well. I sit and, it's getting boring, I'm going to talk to you now and tell you what to do. So, and I think that a lot of us are guilty of that. So we need to be careful when we're in our prayer life. It's not just telling Him what our problems are, or telling Him what He needs to do in our life. It's about listening to Him and following what He has us to do in our lives. So, what we believe is that if you could replace things, you talked about replacing your munchies with your crunchies, like some pea pods. So how about instead of having stress in your life, let's start replacing it with peace, because that's also one of the fruits of the Spirit, isn't it? To have peace in our life. And so when we're Christians and we say that we have the Spirit in us, then people should be around us and feel, man, it's peaceful to be around that person. And so how can you get peace in your life? Well, we have the 10 instructions for peace, on how you can gain peace in your life. So I'm going to go through them with you tonight. So thou shalt be appearanceless, okay? Because it talks about one of the things that we worry about is people looking at us and worrying about what we look like and such. And so Philippians 4:11 says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Okay, who here can be content in whatever circumstance they're in? That's a tough call, isn't it? So it takes practice. And that's the thing is, we go and we exercise our bodies and we exercise our minds many times. But how about exercising our spiritual faith? How about exercising these kind of things? Because we are going to have circumstances. If you think, and I did believe this, I thought, because I was very much believing the prosperity model of Christianity, that I got Christ, so I'm going to get everything working just perfect for me. And that's just a fallacy. That's just not how Christianity works. And I thought, well, there won't be bad experiences in my life, but there has been. And so the cool thing is I finally learned to change that wineskin to a new wineskin and change that paradigm. So we do need to be watching and worrying less about our appearance, because when we are worried about that, we're just one bad hair day or bad zit away from having a bad day. So, thou shalt be wantless. So to want is to be human, okay? To want things like food and shelter and having people love us and take care of us. That's how God created us. But when we start moving those things into, well, I need stuff, and we need to be like the Joneses, then there's a problem. So Psalm 23:1 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. So we want to live a life where we're not in want, but we're happy with where we're at and what we have. Again, that's something that we need to learn to be content with, because especially when you live in an area that's affluent and you go to the local grocery store and you see everybody's driving these fancy cars, or you go to the local gym and everybody's got like just these perfect bodies, and you think, what the heck? And you start coveting, you start wanting those things for yourself. That's something that we're not to do. The Bible's very clear that that's not where our focus should be. Our focus should be storing our treasures up in heaven, not here on earth. So thou shalt be wantless. Thou shalt be acceptanceless. Do what is right, not acceptable. Stop doing what others believe you should do and rely more on what you believe God knows you should do. Romans 12:1. Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices that are holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. And so, when we look at that, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing your mind is important. It's huge to be able to change the way you're looking at things. So these scriptures, I encourage you to have these scriptures and memorize them. The Word says that the Bible, the Word itself, is a sword. And so if you want to combat the devil, these are the swords that you can use to do so. And so having things like this, when I'm dealing with wanting to focus on, hey, I'm not getting approval at work or whatever, this is what I need to be reminded of. That I need to be renewing my mind. I need to be no longer conformed to this world, but to the transforming and renewing of my mind. Thou shalt be resultless. It's far better to have one win and 20 losses than have no losses or any wins. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? So the story of David and Goliath. Here the Philistines are mocking the children of God, and the children of God have been told, you will win this battle, and yet what do? They don't even try. They just stand there and let them mock their God. And then David comes along and says, what are you doing? How can you guys sit and let these guys mock our God? Now, one guy even took up a sword and even tried to fight Goliath until David came along and took him out. So that's what we have to look at. So Philippians 3:10 through 16 talks about this. But all of us, at the end here, all of us who are mature should take such a view of things. And if on some point you think differently, that too God will make clear to you. So only let us live up to what we have already attained. So if you think differently, that you can't do things through Christ, go back and read that entire verse. Because at the end, I like what it says. If you think differently, go back and read the verse again until you finally figure out that God will be there to help you win. So thou shalt be resultless. Self-reliance will surely fail us. That's why we can't depend on willpower. We have to depend on God's power. Pride comes before the fall. James 4:6, God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. So when we look at pride, we need to be prideless as well. Okay? How many here remember these three guys? A few years ago, or last year, they ended up finally winning the NBA championship. But a few years ago, they were predicted that they would win. Did they win? No. Why didn't they win? These are probably the 3 best players in basketball. I don't follow basketball, but I know these 3 guys. These are probably the 3 best players in basketball put on one team together. Why do you think they didn't win?
They didn't know how to play together?
They had no idea how to play together. They were playing with pride. And so one guy can't win a basketball game. Okay, it takes a team. And so then you look at the Miracle on Ice in 1980, the USA hockey team was predicted to come in and get last place. They didn't think they would beat anybody, and they ended up winning the gold medal. Now, why is that? Has anybody here watched the movie Miracle? So this is a good time to watch a movie like that, because watching what Herb Brooks, do you think when they said, oh, it's getting tough, do you think he said, well, you know, that's, you know, I should probably sit down and just relax? Did Herb Brooks do that? Yeah, he's like, well, you're going to skate some more then, because you're obviously not ready yet. And that, don't you think that God, when he gets tough, do you think God says, well, just sit down over here and just I'll let you rest and sit that out? I think God's saying, get your butt back out there and start working. And start actually realizing that it isn't easy to get the good things in life, that it is hard, but it's worth it. And that's what you see when you give up your pride and you become humble. So thou shalt be timeless. This is a big one. This is one that I struggle with, because I'm always in a hurry to get somewhere. And so if you think you're running out of time, you're right. Slowing down to pay attention to God, your family, your health, will begin creating the peace that can only come from those areas in your life where you begin to work out by being timeless. So living a hurry-up life is probably exactly what brought you to where you are right now. And so when I first opened up my business, and and my wife has a pretty busy job too, I remember we were constantly in a hurry. And I swear that my kids probably thought that their names were, come on, let's go, and we're late. Because we were just constantly yelling at them. And then I started seeing my daughters acting the same way. I gotta go, and realized, you know, this is very unhealthy what we've done to our children. And so we looked at how can we change that. So Proverbs 3:1-2 says, my son, do not forget my law, but let your heart keep my commands. For length of days and long life and peace they will add to you. So think about that. If I follow God's law, if I follow what God wants me to do, I can actually add time to my life. I can add peace to my life. And so why wouldn't you want to follow what God has in store for you? Why don't you want to follow what God has asked you to do in His commandments? Because He's going to bless you with great things such as length of days, long life, and peace. So the timeless exercise that I like to do is, there's 168 hours in a week. How many here knew that there's 168 hours in a week? So one of us. so there's 168 hours in a week. So let's just look at, because a lot of us say I don't have time to do things like exercise. That's a big one that I hear. I just don't have time to exercise. Well, let's just say I give you 56 hours a week of sleeping. Okay? So that's 8 hours every night. How many here really get 8 hours of sleep a night? Now some of us do. Now there is a rule that people will say, well, yeah, you should get 8 hours of sleep. Not all of us need 8 hours of sleep. Some of us might need 9 hours of sleep a night, and some might need 6 or 7. So you have to learn that you don't want to cut yourself. How many here wake up to an alarm clock? Okay, I'm here to tell you, if you're waking up to an alarm clock, you're not getting enough sleep. Okay, you shouldn't have to wake up to an alarm clock. You should be able to just wake up on your own. Because do you think an alarm clock puts you in fight, flight, or fright? Yeah, it's like, whoa, what is that? Who really would like to get woke up like that? I mean, that's not a good way to wake up. I'd rather wake up slowly and just like, oh, there's another day. I'm ready to go. So how about work? Give you 50 hours of work. Now, I know some of you are probably working more than 50 hours. Okay, I understand that. But let's just say on average you're working 50 hours a week of work. So that still leaves you with 62 hours in the week left. So what about your drive time and taking kids places, so in the vehicle? So I'm going to give you 14 hours. That's 2 hours every day. Okay, some of you, I know that's probably taking up all your drive time to and from work. But let's just give you 14 hours on average. So that still gives you 48 hours. Preparing and eating food, I'm going to give you 21 hours. That's 3 hours a day. Does anybody here really spend 3 hours a day preparing and eating their foods? No. So I've probably given you more than you need. How about relaxing? I'm going to give you 2 hours a day to relax. That's 14 hours. Still got 13 hours left. I'm going to give you time with God, prayer, church, and small groups. And so you give you 10 hours there, you still have 3 hours left, and really you can exercise 3 hours a week and actually be very, very effective in being healthy through exercise. So did I just show you you can pretty much do everything possible in a week, and then be able to relax, be able to work, be able to spend time with your family, and be able to exercise? So the problem with most people is not that I don't have enough time. The problem with most people is I don't have enough energy. That's the problem. And one thing you'll find when you start eating different, you're going to have the right energy too. So thou shalt be hateless. How do you love and forgive? By realizing how badly you need to be loved and forgiven. Think of all the things that you hate or don't like, and you haven't forgiven others for, and then think about the times that you've done the exact same things to other people. So what I would say is, on a piece of paper, write down all the things that you hate, and then on one side, and on the other side, I want you to write down all the times that you've probably done that same thing to somebody else. Because the cool thing is there isn't one of us here that doesn't need to be forgiven. And the cool thing is you got a God that says, I'm going to forgive you no matter what. That's called unconditional love. And he asks you to do the same thing. So if you're walking around with unforgiveness, it does lead to chronic illnesses. Depression is what, the Bible even talks about it leading to depression. So forgiveness is important. So thou shalt be hateless. For if you forgive men when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Matthew 6:14. So like I said, on a piece of paper, write down all the things that you hate about, that have made you mad. Like maybe people cut you off in traffic. Have you ever done that to somebody? You don't know what they're doing. You don't know why they're doing it. And so it's important that we realize that people are human beings, and you're not perfect. And you're gonna need forgiveness too. So I would suggest that you give forgiveness to other people. And so just to kind of give Jim a plug and tell you a little bit of my story on how I dealt with unforgiveness. I grew up in a home where my dad had left us when we were I was about grade 2, grade 3, and I grew up with my stepdad that was very mean. Basically, I felt the only reason I was there is so I could be a hired hand out on the farm. And so, got married and kids, and opened up an office here in Chanhassen. And opened up our office, and we started seeing a lot of patients, and it seemed like my life was pretty successful. If you were to look at me from the outside, like, wow, you got things going together. But basically what was going on in my life, I was going home, I hated my life. I absolutely hated it. I got to the point where I was telling my wife that I just said, I don't even want to live. I'm not going to kill myself because I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I said if God could just hit me with a bus or something, that would be the best thing for me, because I don't even want to be on this earth at all. I was just devastated inside. My wife's like, well, you need to get probably on some kind of medication or something. I'm like, I don't have a chemical imbalance. I don't know why this is going on, but I do know that I am not enjoying life. And so I was in a BNI group at the time, and in this BNI group there was this life coach there. But she also said that she was a licensed psychotherapist, and she also always kept talking about this healing prayer. She does healing prayer. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to go see her. And so I went and saw her, and we started talking about things. And I'm not big for psychotherapists as far as, tell me about your childhood. And I was just like, I do not want to go there. I don't want to sit there and pour out all the bad things that have happened to me. And so she really didn't spend a lot of time talking about that. She's like, well, tell me how you feel when you think about this. And so I would tell her, and she's like, okay, let's dig deep then and look at what lie you're believing. And I'm like, I'm not believing any lies. And that's the greatest thing about the devil, is that he is the master of lies. He is the king of liars. And you don't know when you're being lied to. What you believe is truth. And so I started telling her some of these things. She's like, that's a lie. God is, show me in the Bible where it says what you're saying. And so I started realizing, you know what, I'm believing these lies. And so the cool thing is we would just stop right there and we would pray for God's truth to enter into that. And it was very healing, and it got me to the point where I was back at work. And I even got to the point where I wouldn't even go into work because I just like, forget it, I don't even want to go to work today. And so it got me to the point where I'm working again, I got a letter from my dad. I hadn't talked to my dad in about 5 years, and I remember talking to this therapist, telling her, she's like, well, do you think you forgive your dad? I said, oh, absolutely, I forgive my dad. And she said, well, when's the last time you talked to him? I'm like, I don't know, about 5 years ago. And she's like, I don't know if you could forgive him. So, but I really believed I had. I believed it up here. And so I got a letter from my dad saying, you know what, I've never met my grandson, and I haven't seen my granddaughters in years. And so I'm wondering if I could just see them. Now, you don't have to see me. I'm wondering if I could just spend some time with my grandchildren. And so when I read that, I was just like, this is ridiculous. And so I actually phoned him. I phoned him up as soon as I got that letter, and I said, you know what? Let's just get together. I said, I forgive you for the things that I've been mad about you. And I kid you not, I had instant healing. I mean, like that. I felt something in my heart like I'd never felt before. And it was just amazing, because when I would sit and think about what my dad was doing, like had done to us as kids and such, I just get so angry. I just stew on it and get mad. And then now when I think about those things, it does absolutely nothing to me. That's my real dad, yeah. So because there was issues there too. But the cool thing is I look at that now, and it doesn't. I have no emotional charge from it. That's what forgiveness can do, and that's why having Jim come and speak here at the end of the last workshop is can be transforming for many people. So thou shalt be fearless. Fear keeps you in fight or fright. And we know that causes diseases. Fear, false evidence of appearing real. Have you guys heard that before? Because that's usually what it is you're worrying about something that's not going to happen. John 10:10 says, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. And I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. That is a verse that you should have that should pop in your mind many times in a day. He, the devil, was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native tongue. For he is a liar, and he's the father of all lies. And I've experienced that, and I think we all have. When you hear someone talking to you, and you don't know what truth is, the devil is the father of all lies. I promise you, you will believe his truth. And his truth is a lie. And so we have to be careful. That's why it's so important to know the word. Thou shalt be faithful. Research shows that people who have faith live longer, more filled lives. They live with purpose. I tell you the truth, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So on the farm, we actually did grow mustard, so I know what a mustard plant looks like. And so what I do know is it does start in a tiny little seed. But I do know that if you don't water it, and you don't weed it, and you don't do the right things, that mustard seed will never grow into that mustard plant. And that's what you have to do with your faith. You have to water it. You have to weed it. You have to take care of it. You have to train it. You have to exercise it. Because faith isn't something that just comes natural to us. Because we have a sinful nature that wants to pull us the other way. So in order to have faith, we need to work on it. And then we can develop faith like that mustard seed develops into a great big plant. Thou shalt be hopeful, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. There really is no past which God is judging you. There is no condemnation in Christ. And isn't that an awesome thing? I mean, because there's condemnation from people, but from God, there is no condemnation. So the past does not equal your future. Have hope. God wants you to succeed more than you do. The Lord your God is with you. The Mighty One will save you. He will rejoice over you. You will rest in his love. He will sing and be joyful about you. That's how much God loves you. Do we really believe that? Because I tell you, there's nothing worse than when we see joyless Christians. I mean, who wants to be a Christian if all the people they're around that say they're Christians are just filled with anger, hate, and pain? I mean, joyful Christians really draw people to Christ. And I'm not talking about just walking around with a smile on your face all the time. I'm talking about if you do go through a tragedy, you still have joy in that. That you show people that I can have, even if I lose a child, I can still trust in God, and I can still get through it with the strength of the Lord. And that's what we need to be walking around. Because I tell you, I wasn't exposed to Christianity until I was in grade 12. I ended up having to leave my home in grade 11, And in grade 12, I ended up in a boarding school. And it was a Christian boarding school. And all my life, I was taught by my dad that Christians are people to be very much stay away from, because they're all a bunch of hypocrites. My dad was a pastor's son, so he in a very small town, and he always talked about how bad that was. So anyways, he taught us this, and so I got to this school, and he was telling me how bad they were, and I got to this school, and I saw hypocrisy, I saw lying, I saw people not living a joy-filled life, and I just like, my dad was so right. But I saw this one teacher, and he was this guy from Australia, and I tell you, this guy was so excited for the Lord. I've never seen such passion. And I remember, because I was in a very dark place in my life, and I remember asking him, I said, I don't know what you got, I don't know how you got it, but I want it. And he led me to the Lord that day, and then it just changed my life. And it was cool to see. And so when you see joy-filled Christians, they draw people to Christ. When you see joyless Christians, they draw people away from Christ. So thou shalt have hope. This guy, if there's one person that should be angry and bitter, it's this guy. So I want to have you just watch a few minutes with Nick.